Hello Clan Mackay, welcome back to the channel. I apologize for the format in which I'm filming this, but my camera stand is not working right now. So I didn't want to delay the content. We wanted to get this out as soon as possible since we filmed this quite a while ago in the winter and not the summer. But my brothers and I went on an Appalachian Trail expedition and we experimented with some Highlander outfits, and we did a video on Benton MacKaye, who is a conservationist here in the United States, who is known as the father of the Appalachian Trail. So we hope you enjoy it and that you get a lot of good information from it. So in the nature of going out here and going on the trail and trying to experience the outdoors in as primitive equipment as we can possibly manage, although a lot of it is modernized, we're going to kind of show you how we've seen it done, how to plait the kilt or plait the fabric so that you can wear it in a kilt format. We chose the simplest way to pleat our kilts, which is to lay the fabric on the ground and manually create the pleats in this manner. There would have been several ways that Highlanders could have created their kilts, such as sewing the pleats in place, making belt loops, or whatever, but for us, this was the easiest format. Once you created the pleats, the wearer would lie down and secure the fabric to their body using a belt. The wearer would stand up, and the excess fabric hanging over the belt would be tucked in the back. All right, so this is, again, our representation of a 1600s, 1700s Highlander style, of what you would do going on drove roads or shuttling cattle to the border and things like that. Most of this is things that I made myself. So I made my shoes right here. I made my jacket out of some wool blanket. I made my frame backpack. Waxed my own tarp, secured my own knife, but I had to make the knife. I made myself a little staff using a kind of a burlap sack from Ecuador, and made my vest, made my sporin, but adopted the Spanish bota for my water source. So anyway, that's kind of how it looks like, and then this is what it looks like when you put on the actual ruck itself. So we're ready to go on the trail, don't you think, Monson?
I think so.
Let's get out there. So these shoes right here, shoes that I made myself, not the most beautiful things, but we're gonna try them out on the trail. I walked the first little bit in these guys since it was asphalt, but we're gonna see how it works and if I can survive the trail. This is the last water we'll see for a little bit. You guys have everything filled? Oh, hey. Yeah.
And film.
So is everything completely filled?
Yeah. Yep.
Mine's filled. Okay. Yep. So
I
we're
took a
gonna
little
cross this
sip.
river. This is leaving the Amicalola State Park. We're now about to go into the actual Chattanooga forest. So this right here is the kilt in its basic form, wrapped around, the back hanging out. There's a couple ways that you can adjust it to make it into a coat, hood, sleeping wrap, whatever it may be. So if you look at Monson right here, Monson, go ahead and put your hood on. basically Monson makes a hood out of the extra material, and then he ties a knot with the two ends that we tucked back here. He ties a knot, and then he's able to put that over the top, secure his hood, and it turns into basically a cloak and little jacket that he can have around his arms. So it keeps him warm at night. He can sleep that way. If it's raining, he can keep himself insulated, whatever it may be. You can also do the same thing without tying the knot in the front. If you're just doing it for fast, just, you know, for speed, just put on top and just have it the same way. But the knot in the front kind of secures the hood in place. So if you're just sitting by a fire, you just want to have it over your head like that, and that's another way you can do it as well. Wow, it's not enough. A very common way to start fires out in the wilderness is flint and steel. So you get a piece of charred cloth. You can also use certain types of funguses from trees or other materials, but to make charred cloth, you just take your tin, have pieces of cloth in there, you put it in the fire for a couple minutes, and it'll char this just like that. But to produce a spark, you just put it right on the flint and the steel.
Standing up?
Yeah.
So imagine the rock is flint.
So you see that? Embers. There you go.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you get a bigger piece, but I was just using a little bit just to demonstrate, but that's how you do it. You just strike it, you put on the piece of charred cloth, you get that spark and you put it in. You got to blow it a few times because it needs a lot of oxygen to grow and to, you know, catch the flame. So that's how we do it. So we chopped up the potatoes and the meat, and we're gonna let it simmer on the fire. We're just gonna cook it with some potatoes and use some pepper, and really nice. When we reached our camp for the day, we took our ceramic pots and filled them with potatoes, meat, and oats. The oats were used to thicken the stew. We also brought along with us some white pepper and salt. It tasted great on the first day, but we eventually got sick of it. Oh yeah, smell that. I feel like a food connoisseur. It needs more time to boil, but it tastes not bad. Not bad at all. I like it.
What kind of rock is this?
It's flint. Bring it closer. All right. Well done, Monson. Well done. It's early in the morning, and I think it went down to 30 degrees last night. And yet, we survived, didn't we?
Yeah, we survived.
So we're currently on the Benton MacKaye portion of the North Georgian Highland Mountains. It's adjacent to the Appalachian Trail, but the reason I want to kind of stop here and talk about Benton MacKaye is because Benton MacKaye was actually the father of the, or just the person who thought of the Appalachian Trail as an actual project to put forward. And a couple interesting things about Benton MacKaye. His great-great-grandfather, William, came from Scotland and he immigrated to New York. And in New York, his family basically resided. His grandfather was Colonel Mackay, an abolitionist from Wells Fargo, one of the original Wells Fargo board members. His father, Steele Mackay, was an actor and inventor. And then Benton MacKaye, he went to Harvard University and was a conservationist and preservationist who worked a lot with trying to discourage urban sprawl, which is the idea that the cities are consuming the landscape around them. He was trying to find ways that we could preserve the landscape to help future generations be able to remember, just like Mr. Moore with President Roosevelt. And one thing that he said in his An Appalachian Trail, a Project in Regional Planning in 1921, is he says that we civilized ones also, whether urban or rural, are potentially helpless as canaries in a cage. The ability to cope with nature directly, unshielded by weakening walls of civilization, is one of the admitted needs of modern times. And he realized that with this expands in urban planning and just civilization as we know it, a lot of people kind of forget what it is to experience nature directly. And he tried to encourage that by creating the Appalachian Trail. And today we have many people that are through hikers that go either starting in the southern terminus or in the north, and they hike the entire trail. And it's been around for a very long time, and it's a very, very fun part of the eastern United States.
I traveled over this country wide, seeking a fortune fair. I've been down the two coastlines, I've traveled everywhere. From Portland East to Portland West, back long line. I'm going now to a place that's best set old hometown of mine. 8 more miles and Louisville will come into view. 8 more miles on this old road and I'll never more be blue. I knew someday that I'd come back, I knew it from the start. Oh, 8 more miles of Louisville, the hometown of my heart. Sure to be a girl somewhere, true like us the ball. Mine lives down in Louisville, she's long, she is tall. But she's a kind you can't find random through the land. Well, I'm on my way this very day to win her heart and hand. 8 more miles and Louisville will come into my view. 8 more miles on this road, I'll never more to do. I knew someday that I'd come back, I knew it from the start. Oh, 8 more miles and Louisville, the hometown of my heart. 8 more miles and Louisville, the hometown of my heart.
Water was a tricky thing on the trail. At one point, we walked several miles without any refill. A good rule to follow is to consume a good amount of water whenever you're at a refill point, because you don't know when you're going to see another one. It helped that we went on our trip in January, so the heat was minimal. Fog was prevalent throughout our trip, and the nights got down to 40 degrees. We walked about 16 miles overall, which doesn't seem like much, but when you're hiking up and down the mountains of Appalachia, it tires you out. We also spent our nights under the stars with no shelter but my wax tarp. So looking back on this trip, there's a couple things we wanted to do. One, we wanted to experience the wilderness in as primitive of a style as possible without being too risky. And two, we wanted to test how certain aspects of Highlander or 1700s equipment would have fared in the environment here in northern Georgia. A couple of things that I thought were actually good was with the current equipment that I have is I really enjoyed having a separate bag that was easily to access. I could access food, or I could put my hat in there if it was getting too hot, or a vest. It was nice to have just a separate bag that wasn't the actual bedroll. I think the backpack was good, but I would like to adjust it some other way, or to make it nicer, because by the end of the trip it just feels like it was molded into all kinds of whatever. It did not stick very well.
Mention the straps too.
What's that?
The straps.
Oh yeah. So the straps right here, we started out with with leather straps that were connected with this smaller thread, but the leather wasn't big enough and it was digging into our shoulders, so we had to makeshift and use these straps. That's definitely a lesson for our future. I think that having knobs, cutting knobs for these sticks to hold into so they don't move around, because as you can see, this thing's bending every which way. I think wool blankets was good. It was something that was, you know, small enough, but also warm enough at night. We weren't the warmest, but we kept a little warm.
I think the kilt itself is also really good, because for me it was good against chafing, because I know when I'm wearing pants on a hike there's a lot of rubbing in areas, and with the kilt it minimalized a lot of that, not all of it, but it was just felt a lot better.
Right, we found out a few different ways to wear the kilt while we were out here. We were originally having it just kind of hanging back, but just kind of dragging on the ground a little bit, so we brought it up and just tied it around our waist like an extra piece of jacket, and that worked the best. But also it was nice to have at nighttime this piece of cloth that you could, you know, put over your head. And we slept like this. We put over our head and untucked the back and tie it around, and we secured it, and it gave us that extra insulation during night. And it got around to be 40-ish degrees at night. Not as bad as we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be in the 30s, but just tender mercies everywhere. So what about your shoes?
Well, my feet hurt in these because they're hiking boots on the bottom, but on the inside they're just flat soled. There's no arch support. That, and they're, I think, a size too big. So
yeah. Mine, I have to be honest, I didn't use these at all during the trip. I just had them just in case. These ones are what I used. I mean, they worked out really well, actually. I went on gravel, I went on soft dirt. I was actually really pleased with just this simple leather shoe. I could feel everything I touched, so it was always stable. I didn't step on anything that caused me to lose my balance, because I could feel everything I touched. One difficult thing was that, as you can see, it began to tear, and which I'll have to fix that, but yeah. Another thing that happened for me was my socks began to ride down, so I had to make a makeshift flash from some of my equipment. So I made a makeshift flash, and I've been hiking this way for about, I don't know, 3 miles, and my socks have remained in the same place. I think really the only thing I'd want to improve for the future is the backpack. Though it saved our life with carrying as much gear as we had to bring out here to stay warm, just the way it was built, it caused several maintenance stops. We had to stop, conduct maintenance on our backpack, but just trying to find a better way to carry the gear than using this kind of bushcraft backpack. Yeah.